These are some of the questions we hear every day from survivors who call us. Our staff speaks with survivors around the nation and can offer languages in English, Spanish, French, Hebrew, and Mandarin. For other languages, we utilize the language line to ensure our services are easily accessible to everyone.
Hello, I'm Deborah, the Executive Director of the Legal Resource Center on Violence Against Women. We began the LRC in 2005 to try and provide quality legal information to survivors of domestic violence who wanted to relocate. Many survivors wanted to move from one part of the country where they were being abused to a different part of the country where they had family support, a safe place to stay, perhaps someone to watch the children. The laws do not make this easy. Survivors who leave a state with their children can be charged with parental kidnapping in some cases and often have to come back to the original state to litigate for custody. Sometimes they even lose custody of their children. At the LRC, we talk directly with survivors and connect them to attorneys who can represent them in the states that are needed. Just to share with you one example. Last year, we were contacted by a victim advocate about a survivor who had fled from California to Missouri with the children. She already had custody of the children and a protection order keeping the abuser away from her. Despite that, in Missouri, unexpectedly, the children were picked up from school one day and returned to the abuser in California. We provided the victim advocate with information and referrals in California and spoke to the survivor with help from an interpreter. We also helped an attorney in California who was willing to represent the survivor, and the attorney wrote us after the case with this note. I wanted to provide you with a quick update regarding Sophia's custody case. We went to court with her yesterday, and I'm pleased to share that the court returned custody of the children to Sophia and granted her permission to return to Missouri with them. To say that it was a joyous reunion is an understatement. Thanks again for all of your support and guidance in this matter. So that's just one example with identifying information about the survivor changed, of course, to share with you how we help folks in interstate cases.
In addition to our direct work with survivors, we present many trainings for attorneys, victim advocates, and judges on these sorts of legal issues. We have conducted more than 137 training programs and taught more than 11,000 people during the last 16 years of our existence. We also train staff from the National Domestic Violence Hotline very regularly on these types of interstate cases.
So I'm gonna steal out with my paint, my brushes. I'll change the directions, I'll hit every street. It's the Tinseltown scandal, the Robin Hood vandal. She goes out and steals the king's English. And in the morning you wake up and the signs point to you. They say, I'm so glad that you finally made it here. You thought nobody cared, but I did. I could tell. And this is your year, and it always starts here. And
Hello, my name is Taylor, and I'm the project coordinator at the LRC. I have worked in the anti-violence field for 6 years. First, as an advocate for survivors of intimate partner violence and sexual assault at a police department. At the LRC, I speak every day with survivors of domestic violence, attorneys, and advocates about intimate partner violence and interstate custody. For every person who calls, I conduct an intake with them and gather facts of the case. That sounds like a simple task, but it's a bit more complicated than that because, for the survivors who call us, I am asking them to talk with me about oftentimes the most traumatic experiences of their lives. I think it's important to recognize that this is a big hurdle to take for survivors seeking a way out of their dangerous situations. When survivors of domestic violence call us, It's generally because they were referred to us from another service provider who is familiar with our mission, which is to improve legal representation for survivors in interstate custody cases and to provide assistance to the victim advocates and attorneys in those cases. Every day we hear from survivors that their abusers threaten to take their children away from them if the survivor ever tries to leave or call for help. Additionally, we know that leaving an abusive relationship can be the most dangerous time for a survivor, and this is when violence tends to escalate, when an abuser feels they are losing control of the relationship. So we make sure we're having a safety planning conversation when we're talking with survivors about potentially leaving. Most of the survivors with whom I speak need many things, including shelter, financial support, legal advice and representation, a way to keep their children safe, and a legal way to leave the state for a safer location. For interstate cases, I make many calls on behalf of survivors to help them find attorneys in the state where they need one. And Deborah and Maria provide legal support to the attorneys we find. At the LRC, we believe that survivors know their situations best. Abusive partners will weaponize children as a way to keep controlling a partner and to undermine their autonomy and decision-making, forcing survivors to think they only have two options: leave the situation without their children, or stay with the abuser and continue being unsafe. Fortunately, these are not the only options, and we are improving the legal landscape for survivors of domestic violence.
The Robin Hood vandal, she goes out and steals the king's English. And in the morning you wake up and the signs point to you. They say, I'm so glad that you finally made it here. You thought nobody cared, but I did, I could tell. And this is your year, and it always starts here.
Hi, I'm Maria, the Deputy Director of the LRC. Since the beginning of 2018, I worked as a volunteer translating calls for the Legal Resource Center when Spanish-speaking survivors needed help. And then I joined the team in May of 2020. It has really been an eye-opening experience for me, and I want to share with you a few of my observations. When domestic violence survivors do not speak English, they face additional hurdles in getting help. They may be trying to talk to victim advocates or attorneys who do not speak their language. Some come from countries where the police and the legal system cannot be trusted, and with no family close by, they have nowhere to turn for help. And if the police are called, sometimes the victims cannot communicate with them, and the law enforcement officers may take the side of the abuser. Many of these non-English speaking callers are immigrants, and their abusers use this as a weapon to keep their partners captive and in submission. Many immigrant survivors have been provided misinformation about the U.S. legal system by the person who is abusing them. They are told that they will lose their children, that they will be deported, or that they will be left destitute if they leave the relationship. Before calling the LRC, they may not know they are entitled to protection orders, child support, free legal services, or even legal relief under the federal immigration laws. This is the kind of vital support that the LRC provides to these survivors, and in Spanish. Additionally, interstate cases are so complicated, making it especially important for callers who do not speak English to have an interpreter and get access to the services that the Legal Resource Center provides. We are a small team of 2 part-time attorneys and 1 project coordinator. Your support is crucial to continuing our mission. We all know that these are challenging times with COVID-19, but we want you to know that we are very grateful for your continuing support. Thank you.
You thought nobody cared, but I did, I could tell. And this is your year, and it always starts here. And oh, you're aging well.
COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on domestic violence survivors and their children. Many of them are trapped in their homes with perpetrators and subjected to ongoing violence. They may be afraid to take their children into shelter because of the pandemic, or to travel on buses or airplanes to get to safety. Meanwhile, abusers are taking children across state lines and keeping them there in violation of existing court orders. They know that it's harder to get court relief right now because of limited court openings. At the LRC, we continue to help survivors navigate a path to safety during the pandemic, and we rely on your support to make our services a reality. Thank you.
I'm so glad that you finally made it here with the things you know now that only time can tell. Looking back, seeing far